I knew my wife wasn't alone, because she came home wearing a perfume I didn't make. I formulate desire for a living. In a cold, white room that smells like citrus and ghosts, I build perfumes. Narrowly spines, smoke-soft ambers, the whisper of violet leaf that makes strangers lean in curious. People tell me scent is invisible. They're wrong. Scent is the most honest costume. It tells on you when your mouth won't. The night I knew something was off, Ava came back from late Pilates and kissed me in the doorway. Her lips were warm, her laugh effortless, her hair pinned up in one of those careless ways that always makes me feel like she's just rolled out of a secret. She smelled not like the skin I sleep beside, not like the bergamot and sandalwood I'd built for her and called after the rain, but like a stranger who just walked through cedar smoke and expensive hunger. A masculine oud, vetiver cut low. A note I could place in my sleep. Black Atlas by Farrand, too heavy for a reformer class, too deliberate for an accident. Traffic was murder, she said, dropping her tote by the console. You eat. I waited, I said, and reached for a second kiss I didn't deserve to analyze. On her throat, just beneath the tiny gold chain she never takes off, the scent lingered like a thumbprint. I cooked carbonara and asked about her day, and the conversation wore its comfortable sweater, but someone had tugged a thread and I could feel the hem give. Ava talked about a brand launch for one of her lifestyle clients, about content calendars and deliverables, the usual PR ballet. She smiled across the table, fork lifted, and I loved that smile because I'd seen it in every version of light. I loved her, which made all my instincts feel disloyal. "Can I steal your hoodie?" she asked after, already walking toward the bedroom like she lived here. She did. And in me, she did until she didn't. "Steal everything," I said, which is our private joke, and watched her disappear down the hallway with that careless, irresistible sway. The hoodie would come back smelling like her, which is one of the small, stupid reasons to be married. In bed, she pressed her knees behind mine and hooked an arm around my waist, habits that tell a sweeter truth than language, and I let the room go dark. I told myself people pick up scents in elevators, and that the gym had a new diffuser, and that suspicion is an unkind hobby. I didn't sleep. YouTube would prefer I skip the parts that could get me demonetized, so let's just say this. Our intimacy used to hum a chord that felt tuned to our names. It had been quieter lately. I'd chalked that up to stress, to phones on nightstands, to the way cities teach you to love like you're also answering emails. The night after Pilates, when she pulled me close with a kind of urgency I recognized from our early months, I let myself be carried by it. Skin found skin the way hands find a light switch in the dark. We laughed into each other's necks. We stopped, breathless on the right side of tasteful description. Later, when she fell asleep with her mouth open slightly, she'll murder me for that detail if she hears this. Her breath smelled like mint and the aftertaste of something unsaid. Here, what you need to know about noses. Once you notice a seam, you can't unfeel it. Over the next week, I caught traces. A scarf in the hamper with that cologne stowaway. The inside of her wrist, scrubbed clean but still harboring a certain persistence aromatics people pay extra for. A delicate smear of coral lipstick on the rim of a glass at home. Ava is a burgundy woman when she bothers with lipstick, the sort of color that commits to a mood. Coral is a postcard from a different trip. I did not install cameras. I did not follow her like a bargain detective. My revenge, if you can call it that, began like any good brief. Design a test, capture the truth. I'm good at signatures. Every formula I make has one. The twist of pink pepper I tuck under citrus to make it flirt. The drop of labdanum that turns sweetness into something adult. As a joke years ago, I mixed us a private scent. I called it Aaron's, because it wasn't meant to impress anyone. Cardamom for warmth, clean musks for laundry fresh lies, a slice of green apple because she once told me it smelled like the first day of school. She wore it on Sundays. I wore the twin version, a little darker, for nights when I wanted to tell her without words that I was thinking about her skin. I made a new batch. Same recipe, one change. I added a molecule I've only used twice, an aldehydic sparkle that kisses air with a specific kind of electric cotton brightness. You can't unhear it once you do. I decanted it into her pretty little atomizer and left it by the mirror with a note. For us. Oh. She spritzed it across her collarbone before we went out to a dinner that turned into a dance, and then into that kind of taxi ride where your thighs remember the script. At home, we fell into each other like we were good at it again, and I stopped looking for specters because the woman in my arms felt indisputably mine. 2 nights later, when she said she had a late client thing, I said, "Kill it," and watched her shoulders soften. She left in the green dress that knows exactly what it does to traffic. The apartment held the perfume she'd chosen, not mine. Something bright and single-minded with far too much lily for my taste. I went to the launch my assistant had been complaining about. Some influencer-heavy opening at a new boutique hotel called The Latch. It's the kind of place that names cocktails after moons and installs art that photographs better than it lives. My work was on a shelf in the lobby store, which is sometimes how you end up at these things, to see where your own name ends up. The first thing I noticed was the lighting. The second was the band, good enough to make people believe their conversations mattered. The third was Black Atlas cutting through all that curated citrus like a rumor. There are a dozen men who wear that cologne within 5 blocks of any bar, but this one had a top note that felt intimate, like a shirt you've leaned into. He stood by the bar adjusting a camera strap on his shoulder, and the way his hand skimmed the strap told me he'd been skimming straps all his life. His hair had that expensive messiness. His eyes flicked to every reflective surface the way photographers do. He was tall enough to reach a woman's attention without trying, and women were trying not to try. The name on his lanyard read Marconlenn, Content Director. Of course. I found Ava in the room the way a tuning fork finds its note. She was on a balcony, laughing with 2 women I'd met at other openings, legs crossed at the ankle in a way that made men perform their best posture. When Marco moved toward her with that proprietary casualness people earn by being paid to hover, my chest did a small, ugly thing. He leaned in to say something, too close for coworkers, too familiar for strangers. Ava smiled with her eyes while rearranging her mouth to look like a public smile. Between them, not on them, I could smell us. A whisper of errands. The aldehyde glinted, then was gone. I could have walked outside and asked a question on that balcony. I could have ruined a night and solved a puzzle. Instead, I walked to the lobby store and bought a candle with my own label like a civilian, because it felt less pathetic than standing still. When I turned to leave, a woman stepped into my path and tilted her head like an editor about to deliver truth. "You're the nose," she said. "I wear your cedar one when I want trouble." She looked like a photograph of mischief. Leather jacket, a slash of eyeliner, a smile that forgave you for being exactly as transparent as you are. "June," she said, offering a hand. "I work across the street at the bar that doesn't have influencers." "Owen," I said, because that was still me. She followed the direction of my eyes to the balcony. "Ah," she said kindly, "the choreography of maybe." "I hope I'm being paranoid," I said. "Paranoid is what we call accurate before we have proof," she said, and I cracked a laugh I didn't owe her. "Come by after this if you want a drink without ring lights." I walked out before my face could be a scene for someone else's story. In the mirror over the elevator's lacquered doors, I looked like a man pretending he'd accidentally put on his best suit. At home, the bedroom held its breath like it does when you've moved the furniture of a feeling but not the frames. Ava returned past 11, cheeks high with the kind of glow you can get from cameras or adrenaline. She kicked off her heels and crawled onto the bed and settled her head on my chest like she always had. She smelled like the hotel's lobby, bergamot, lilies, and the faint, far-off echo of my Sunday formula. I had the sudden, ridiculous thought that my perfume had been in a room I hadn't. It felt like seeing your own handwriting in a stranger's pocket. "Tell me something that isn't media trained," I said, fingers in her hair. She closed her eyes. "I wanted you there," she whispered. "Not because it would have made me better behaved, but because I like who I am when you see me. The truth is erotic when you haven't heard it in a while." I kissed her forehead and told myself that was an answer. In the morning, I made espresso and something stubborn in me decided to stop being noble. I opened her tote to slip in a sample she'd asked me for, and there it was. A hotel key card sleeve from the latch, lipstick marked, with a room number handwritten inside. 714. The writing wasn't hers. I stood with it in my palm while the machine hissed and thought, today, then. I sent one text to June. "Is the bar open at noon?" "For a rescue mission, always," she replied. At 11, I walked into the latch like I had an appointment. The elevators require a key, but the stairwell doesn't. Hotels rely on people being lazy. On 7, the hallway smelled like punishing fig, like money trying to be a fruit. Outside 714, I heard what I dreaded and what perversely I needed, the hush of two people speaking not like coworkers. The lock light went green when I slid the sleeve's card that wasn't the card. The door didn't open. Of course it didn't. I stood there with my heart doing math and almost knocked. I didn't. I left the sleeve tucked in the doorframe with a note inside. "Bring this home and tell me the story you're proud of." Oh. At June's, the bar was a dark wood Mercy. She poured me something amber that tasted like staying alive another hour and asked no questions until I wanted one. "You could set the whole place on fire," she said later, polishing a glass with the kind of attention that makes time behave. "Or you could do the thing that actually hurts." "What's that?" "Make her choose in daylight." Ava came home early. She carried the sleeve like it was a foreign object. Her face looked like a magazine cover printed on thin paper. We stood in the kitchen where so much of our good life had been cooked. "I didn't open it," she said, placing the sleeve on the counter like an offering. "I couldn't." "You did, though," I said, nodding at the faint coral smear, the bent edge. I said it gently because cruelty never makes a story end well. "Is Marco your Pilates?" The smallest smile fought through her fear. "He's the idea of a bad decision," she said, "which is sometimes worse than the decision." I picked up the sleeve and slid my note free and laid it flat so we could read, both of us, what I'd asked this morning. She kept her eyes on the cardstock. When she spoke, her voice forgot its tricks. "I wanted to feel like a movie," she said. "In the lobby, on the balcony, with lights and people thinking my name mattered. He's good at making people feel like that. He took my picture 6 weeks ago and said I looked like the kind of woman who keeps secrets in satin, and the dumbest part of me stood up and clapped. I didn't sleep with him." She breathed. "I wanted to be the kind of person who wouldn't. I wanted to come home to you and tell you I'd been ridiculous, and we could laugh and maybe make out on the counter like we used to after parties. Then I looked at the door of 714 and thought if I go in, something won't come back out with me." The kitchen felt huge. I leaned against the sink. She reached for the atomizer on the console, our Sunday scent, and sprayed once into the air, a signal. "I wore this at the hotel because I wanted to remember myself," she said. I hoped you smell me on me and not someone else. That's not how skin works, I said, and we both smiled brokenly like people who should have asked different questions earlier. I'm sorry, she said, not the PR version, the kind that doesn't ask you to forgive me yet. Are you in love with him? No, she said, immediate as a door slam. I'm in love with the mirror he held up for me. It's a cheap mirror. I nodded. Are you in love with me? Yes, she said, and it landed with weight. Enough to be humiliated in our own kitchen and tell the truth and let you decide whether we're still the we I keep using. I made us coffee because you should always have something to do with your hands during a negotiation for your life. While it dripped, we stood close enough to remember the topography of us. I could feel the heat coming off her collarbone. Here are my terms, I said. They're not clever, no hotel rooms, no secret lunches. If you want to be someone's movie, be mine, I'll bring the lights. I gestured toward the bedroom. We can make this place a set again. She put her hands on my chest and I could feel, literally feel, her relief in the tremor. What about yours? She said. Your terms. I'm done being noble and quiet, I said. If I smell something wrong, I won't invent a diffuser to blame. I'll ask. And I'll listen when you say you need something we stopped giving each other because life got content. We didn't kiss then. We didn't perform a reconciliation for the ceiling. We stood there and let our bodies remember the promise without writing the ending in one scene. That night, we took a walk and didn't talk about anything strategic. We ate pizza on a stoop like civilians. She leaned into me when the wind picked up and I tilted my head into her hair and breathed. Cardamom, clean musk, a little apple us. Marco texted her the next day. She showed me the screen before she deleted him. He kept it professional, which is how men ask you to keep the door propped open. She didn't. At a future launch, when we saw him across a room, he lifted a hand that said he knew he'd been seen and kept his distance because sometimes cowardice is good manners. Weeks later, the city hosted one of those galas where everyone pretends their shoes don't hurt. Ava wore the green dress and a smile that belonged to her, not to a camera. When I spun her under a string of bulbs and pulled her in, careful, tasteful, the kind of heat YouTube lets you keep, it felt like a scene we'd earned. She pressed the inside of her wrist to my mouth, and I tasted coffee and trust. We danced until the band sang us into night. I still build perfumes in a cold, white room. I still believe scent tells on you. Lately, the apartment smells like cardamom and pasta and the kind of laughter couples make when they're impressing each other again. If I catch a strange note on Ava's skin these days, it's usually flour or the warmth left by the back of my hand. I can live with those. And sometimes, when she leaves for a meeting and pauses at the door to look back at me like I'm the reason she knows her own name, I think about the key card sleeve I didn't open and the balcony I didn't storm and the door we did. We chose daylight. Desire, it turns out, looks better there.